scripture reading from this morning, it's Judges chapter 4, verses 1 to 7. And I will say, Candy really won the lottery today because it has a ton of biblical names in it. So we're just going to go with whatever she says their names are.
The Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. So the Lord sold them into the hand of King Jabin of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help, for he had 900 chariots of iron and had oppressed the Israelites cruelly for 20 years. At that time, Deborah, a prophetess, wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites came up to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you. Go take position at Mount Tabor, bringing 10,000 from the tribe of Naphtali and the tribe of Zebulun. I will draw Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the Wadi Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand."
Amen. 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 Well, we did that very well. Woo! Absolutely. Congrats. So today's reading from the book of Judges takes place in that time after the Israelites have stopped wandering in the wilderness and come into the promised land. Moses is dead, buried where no one can find him. Joshua, his successor, is also dead. The Israelites have settled on this land, but not surprisingly, the people who were already there have a few things to say about these newcomers coming into their land. But before you know it, the teenagers are hanging out at the mall, and people are intermarrying between tribes, and all sorts of gods who aren't the God of Israel are being worshipped. And evil is being done in God's eyes, and the people are being punished. It's a time when people are trying to do what seems right in their eyes, and it's going about as well as you think it would. Later, the people will ask God for a king so that they can do what is right in the king's eyes. And David and Solomon will do okay, but it's pretty much downhill after that. The people are still trying to figure out how to stay on that right road with God. And what they seem to be missing is that they need to stop thinking about it from a human perspective and think about what is evil in God's sight, not in theirs. And the thing is, they have Deborah, right? They have a judge. She sits under a palm tree, and the people come up to her for judgment. And back then, being a judge meant that you were a political and a military leader as well. You can see that when she tells Barak that after 20 years of oppression, it's time to pull 10,000 troops together and take on King Jabin, who's been oppressing them. Never mind the 900 high-tech iron chariots. Now for that community, of course, this is an enormous risk, right? She is literally telling them that they may lose a generation of their young men at the peak of their potential, when they are the most able to raise crops and father children. And if the uprising fails, it is going to be, there's not going to be a whole lot left. But she is a prophet, and God talks to her, and she talks to God. And this cycle of disobedience and punishment and crying out to God, then relief through unexpected people, well, it has occurred before. And it will occur again. That is the nature of life in Israel under the judges. And maybe the lesson to take from today's reading is something about God providing, or God always listening to our prayers, always seeing our actions for good or for evil. And maybe it's something about the need for prophets, and the need to listen to the prophets that God has sent us. Goodness knows so many of us are crying out to heaven for help. And there seems to be iron chariots bearing down on us from every direction. But here's the thing. Let me ask Candy to read verse 8. It's not in your bulletins. It's Barak, the military leader, speaking to Deborah. So Candy, can you read us verse 8?
Barak said to her, "If you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go."
All right. What do you guys hear in that sentence? Give it to us again.
Barak said to her, "If you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go."
What do you guys hear?
Practice what you preach.
Practice what you preach.
If you're willing to stick your neck out, I'll stick my neck out too.
Right, like we gotta go together. We gotta take this risk on together, not just me. Other things?
He's not trusting her word.
There's a little bit of, okay girl, you're talking big. Is your mouth writing a check that your actions are not gonna be able to cash? That's what you heard.
Put your money where your mouth.
Put your money where your mouth is. It's hard. It's hard. I don't know what's in that phrase either. The one thing I would throw out there also, the other thing that I heard, was, is this a military leader who is telling the political leader, you cannot throw away the lives of all these soldiers? I don't know. There's so many ways of interpreting this, right?
Right.
So I hear that. Okay. So now, Candy, will you read verse 9? It's the one that follows it again. It's not in your bulletin. This is what Deborah answers to Barak.
And she said, "I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman."
Okay, one more time.
And she said, "I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman."
What do you guys hear in that?
I'll go, but I really shouldn't go.
I'll go, but I really shouldn't go.
It's gonna end bad.
It's going to end badly.
Yeah.
Or at least it's not going to end the way you think it's going to end. Other things? So this is our only reading from the book of Judges, which is kind of interesting because Judges has Samson and Delilah in it. It has a few other stories where you're like, how did we skip those? But you may, and some of you may remember, the woman in the prophecy that Sisera's going to be sold into her hand isn't Deborah. It's Jael. And for some of you who are like reaching way back into Sunday school, you may not have had this in Sunday school because I didn't have it in my Sunday school. Jael is the one who takes out General Sisera with a glass of milk and a blanket and a tent peg. Do you remember that? Tent peg and a mallet to the head, to his temple. Yeah. Really, it's like an Avengers movie. So, chapter 4 is what we're reading today. Is the prose version of this story. Chapter 5, the next one, is the poetic version, and they're basically the same. I can tell you, Sisera does not meet a happy ending in either one. He is not getting up again after Jael is done with him. But there too, Sisera flees the battlefield on foot, right? He's got all these chariots, and Barak and his army, they're not so sure, and then Deborah says, no, go for it, and they go into battle, and in fact, Sisera's whole army runs away. Sisera runs away on foot, and he goes to hide in Jael's tent, because Jael's husband is one of the smiths, blacksmiths, who made the iron chariots. So he figures, right, he's safe there, right? This is his ally, this is his supplier, right? This is somebody who brings him the iron chariots. And it's not entirely clear why Jael kills Sisera. Now, maybe it's because she believes in Israel's cause. Maybe it's because she does not want to be a trophy of war when the Israelite army comes sweeping over the camp. We don't know why she does what she does. But chapter 5, the poetic version of this story, which has all the same gory details as chapter 4, that is literally one of the oldest pieces of text in the Bible. It was clearly from an oral tradition, and then when the Israelites were defeated and in Babylon and were writing down their sacred stories, this story of Deborah and Jael and Barak and Sisera got written down. And the way it's written, no one points out that it is unusual for Deborah or Jael to be women and be in positions of leadership and be in combat. And there they are. It's just that 99 times out of 100 when the Bible tells this kind of story, right? It's just the two generals facing off with each other. Yet in this story, there isn't just one amazing woman, there are two. They have names and identities and leadership and combat. How does a window stay open for 3,000 years to let that story come down to us? When we first started letting women be theologians, meaning publishing what they thought and listening to it, they said to the church community, you know this practice we have of only men being leaders because that's the way it was in the Bible? You guys can see that Deborah has been there all along, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then later, when the women theologians had a bit more time and space to speak up, they pointed out, you know, you don't have to translate it white of loud enough, right? You could translate it woman of fire and it would be just as accurate.
Yeah.
As we sit here today calling out to God in a world that seems to be crumbling under the weight of the 900 iron chariots that we're facing, I wonder if the lesson from today's text is to find someone who is a little closer to what is crumbling. Like that kid who was closer to the tires. Find a fiery woman and see what she sees in that text. Find a general who cares about maintaining the lives of his men and doesn't care how much glory is lying down the road for him or for anyone else. Find a woman who knows her way around a tent peg. Find people who God has managed to slip through a narrow window that God has held open for thousands of years. Who are the prophets and the judges and the generals and the wives of the blacksmiths that we know? Who somehow are able to look at the world and figure out how to respond to what is evil in God's sight, not in their own. Because wouldn't that be more true to God's promise to the marginalized and the oppressed? God has promised to have mercy upon those who have had enough of contempt of the proud and the scorn of those at ease. That's from the song we started our worship service this morning. I'm not saying it will be easy to identify them, but we may find that we have judges and prophets trying to help us find a way past the iron chariots that are breaking our souls to pieces. But we have to stop looking at it from our perspective and look at it through God's eyes.